Yes, got it.
You're on.
Okay, well, I just want to say hello and welcome. And I'm going to start with good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, because I know we're in different parts of the world, and I'm not sure where you may also be watching this recording. So I just want to say welcome all of you to what I'm sure will be a very interesting and insightful conversation and debate. So in terms of myself, I'm Marilyn Devonish. I'll be your host for the evening in terms of introducing it, but I will be handing it over to our speakers for the main question and answer session with our guest today. So I will take you through a bio introduction. Now, for those who haven't met me before, I am a coach and therapist and a remote working consultant. And I've been doing that since 2003, not just in response to the pandemic pivot. And I also am a freelance writer, so write for publications such as The Times, The Guardian, Forbes, and of course, The Nation in Barbados, courtesy of the wonderful Tyrone Roach. So let's tell you what this evening is about. The UK Bajan Hub Group are hosting this evening's event to respond to their membership's request to hear from Rev Guy Hewitt. And we want to hear his views and opinions on his eligibility for President of the Barbados Democratic Labour Party, which will also be referred to as the DLP for those who maybe are not familiar if you're watching this on one of the other channels as a recording. The party already has a president, Verla Dupisa, who took over the reins following a crushing 30-0 defeat in the last general election. So the question is, and I'm sure there'll be many other questions tonight, but the big question is, what does the Reverend Guy Hewitt intend to do to restore a once great party to become again a force to be reckoned with in Barbadian politics? And just to note, the incumbent Verla Dupisa has accepted an invitation to this platform to talk to the UK Barbadian community, but the date has not yet been confirmed. So I will now give you an overview. Now, I know those of you who are here live, you know Guy Hewitt. For the benefit of those also watching the recording, I'm going to give you a brief overview and background so you have an appreciation of his many accomplishments. And this is a shortened version. There is a lot more, but this will bring you up to speed. And I'm sure there'll be things that maybe you weren't aware of or have not remembered. So Guy Arlington Kenneth Hewitt, born in November 1967, is a Minister of Religion and Social Development Specialist who held the ambassadorial appointment of the High Commissioner of Barbados to the UK from 2014 to 2018. He previously worked with the University of West Indies, Caribbean Policy Development Centre, Commonwealth of Nations, Caribbean Community, and the City and Guilds of London Institute. Hewitt has been an advocate for the Commonwealth of Nations of London, as Commonwealth of Nations Small Island Developing States. It may later be referred to as SIDS, focusing on change in the OECD Development Assistance Committee rules, allows the Caribbeans and other SIDS to access development fund financing when devastated by catastrophic storm systems. And I'm sure that many of you were here for that discussion last night. In 2016, to celebrate Barbados' 50th anniversary of independence, he published a book, Fathering a Nation, on the life and legacy of Errol Walton Barrow, the first Prime Minister of Barbados and one of Barbados's national heroes. He was instrumental in raising sponsorship for the Barbados Jubilee events in the UK, which culminated in the Gala Award event at the Savoy Hotel. In 2018, and this is very relevant for those of us here in the United Kingdom, he was one of the leading advocates for the Windrush generation in the wake of the scandal. The government's immigration policy deemed long-term West Indian-born residents as illegal immigrants. This resulted in people who had lived and worked in the UK for decades being denied fundamental rights, including the right to work, claim benefits, and access healthcare. Some were placed in detention centres, others were even deported. He also published articles with the Chatham House and the University of the West Indies on the Windrush scandal and how this matter was escalated to become a global issue. Hewitt's application was included in the podcast series 100 Campaigns That Changed the World. In addition to his assignment to the Court of St. James, Hewitt was the permanent representative to the UN International Maritime Organization and a governor on the Commonwealth Secretariat. He has also published several other books and as an Anglican priest has ministered in Barbados and the wider Caribbean, North America and Europe. And he is currently based in South Florida. And on Friday, the 11th of June, Rev Guy Hewitt officially decided to run for the presidency of the Democratic Labour Party. So welcome, 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 Guy Hewitt. I look forward to hearing from you this evening. And I'm now going to introduce to you our questioner for this first portion of the evening. So you will be hearing from Christopher Griffith. So just to give you an overview, Christopher was born in Barbados and came to live in the UK in 1992, where he completed his degree at the University of Sussex in Business Studies. He has a wife and 2 children and is a trustee at the local community in West Norwood and lives in South Norwood. He has worked in sales and business development for the past 25 years in the UK, with global account management roles in Shell and Thomson Reuters. Since 2012, he has been working in his own consultancy, CJNM Consulting Associates Limited, and has worked on behalf of Invest Barbados and the Ministry of Labour on specific projects in the UK. He is currently the head and founder of the UK Labour Programme, which currently 100+ farm workers from Barbados working across the UK. The programme is poised to expand into hospitality and construction jobs shortly, bringing over further Barbadian workers for job roles in the UK. So we will now have a discussion which will last for approximately 30 minutes. So Christopher and Guy Hewitt, I hand over to you for the next portion of this evening's events. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here.
Thank you very much, Marlene, and it's a pleasure to be able to have this time with you, Guy. We're going to sort of just take a couple of minutes, maybe up to 30 minutes, to answer some questions about the particular situation you find yourself in at the moment. And I'll just start off. In terms of the local political scene at the moment, Guy, you find yourself currently in a situation where you're running a campaign for the presidency. And I just want to ask a first question. You've labeled your campaign New Dawn. I just want to ask you, why have you given that campaign label to your bid for the presidency of the Democratic Labour Party?
Well, I want to say, I mean, again, Chris, thank you for being here with me. For me, this is a new dawn for me personally. As I've said to people, I don't have the mindset of a politician. I've come into this with a long background in public service, but really coming in to try to make a difference and do things differently. For me, it has to be a new beginning within the Democratic Labour Party, to the extent that, as mentioned at the last general election, the party was routed, losing all of its seats. So therefore, it cannot be business as usual. And there has to be, I would say, take fresh guard and a new approach to how we do this. And to me, generally, I would like to say a new dawn for our politics and our political climate. Getting beyond what I think has been too much tribalism or increasing tribalism, increasing cronyism, people raising serious concerns on the ground about lack of integrity and lack of integrity legislation, concerns about corruption. So for me, it's really about trying to do things differently. And I would say bringing a fresh approach to politics on the ground.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. I can see you have an interesting mandate, because a lot of things that you said there are going to be things that are going to be what I say, sort of a chance to bring a new perspective. So I just want to ask a question about the local political scene, because you're obviously trying to change things, but you obviously have a system there you have to work with. In terms of your viability to run for the presidency, it's reported in the local press that over 16 DLP constituency branch offices have backed the current president of the Democratic Labour Party, Volodya Pisa. So how are you going to go about making an impression already with such a enormous amount of backing from, as I said, they said 16 constituency offices for the current president?
Well, I'm not sure what the data you have, but I am aware that there are a number of branches that have not given her a nomination, including those that she's attended. So I would say that there is mixed thinking on the ground in the DLP on the issue of leadership and on her leadership. And if you are following what is going on the ground there, you would also know that there's not overwhelming support in terms of turnout at these meetings to suggest that there's a groundswell, or there has been a groundswell of support for her candidature. I want to say, as was mentioned earlier, that she stepped in at a time when it appears to some that there was nobody there to fill the void. And we have to thank her for that. But things, now we're on a different playing field. We have to get ourselves election ready. And as I have said before, the outcome of the St. George North by-election suggests that there is still a lot of work to be done, a lot of things that have not been done. And that is where I am stepping up and coming forward to offer what I think is my greater competencies in the area of leadership.
Okay, fantastic. Guy, obviously you have tapped in to the local field in the Democratic Liberal Party, because you said very clearly in the press that you had no intention to run for any political office, but you were swayed by people within the party who basically suggested to you they needed a change. But I want to ask you a question about some of the criticism you're getting from the current party. The vice president of the party, Andre Worrell, and others, the Young Democrats, have voiced some very vocal opposition to your running for the presidency. I just want to get your feeling on, is that something you thought was going to be par for the course, or did they take you by surprise?
For those people who have supported me or supported me, I have used the Michelle Obama phrase, when they go low, we go high. I had hoped that this campaign would not have been personalized, that attacks would have been founded on fact and on substance. The statement by the Young Democrats was so factually incorrect. It was a disappointment to me that people who perceive or purport themselves to be future leaders would show such poor lack of integrity, that they would deliberately lie on a letter towards supporting somebody else. But that is what it is. Andre Worrell, I know, has publicly stated his support for Verla de Pisa as his leader, and therefore anything that he says, I presume will be consistent with what she desires. And I'm not looking for him to come out in support of me in such regard. But what I would also say is, apart from those who are towing, in a sense, a very specific personal line, there is in the country and in the Democratic Labour Party a desire for the kind of effective leadership that they feel can bring the party towards winning a general election. And as you mentioned at the beginning of your statement, one of the things that nobody has been able or willing to say to me or say publicly, that they feel that the current president is capable of leading Barbados.
Okay, I'll just ask one other question regarding some of their criticism, because it is one of the things that you will need to address. People are saying, especially some of these critics of yourself and your desire to run for president, that you were not involved or have not been working in the trenches to rebuild the party after the debacle of 2018, May 2018 election. And also, some of them have said that Verla de Pisa said you're a political neophyte in terms of your political experience. What would you say to these criticisms? And can you share what was your involvement in the party in developing it after the election debacle?
You can't be in two places at once. I have been working abroad for the last 2 years out of the need to pay bills and support my family. Just as nobody could expect you to be on the ground rebuilding the party after the election, nobody should be able to expect that of me because not that I wanted to, I had to go abroad. Considering with the regard to being a political neophyte, I have said that there are persons, especially in the UK, who are aware of the work that I did against the UK government. It was a political campaign. It was a successful one. And while, as I said to people before, I have never won an election, I have never lost one or even two. To me, that actually puts me in a much better batting position because I've actually got the wind behind me.
Yes, I just wanted to address that criticism because I think one of the things that I
No,
feel
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
That's
I think one of the things
role.
that I feel is a little bit unfortunate, and I think this is also pertaining to the diaspora. It seems that persons in Barbados generally seem to have a very, I don't know what's the term I can use, but a sort of a inferior approach to people who are Barbadians who return back to Barbados to contribute. So that's why I wanted to address that criticism because I think
well, okay, and this is something that happens. This is a reality you're speaking to, Chris, and there's that sense on the ground that you have gone away, you've lived a better life, whether it's in the UK or Canada or the US. You come back home, and returning nationals often come back home with, you know, a nice house and a nice car and certain benefits. So there is a certain level of resentment, I think, and because of sometimes that absence of communication between what goes on abroad and what happens in Barbados, people can feel that you are once Barbados is out of sight, it is out of mind. But as you know, and as the diaspora abroad knows, they are very much committed to the country. And even though they've had to migrate for whatever reasons, Barbados will always be home. And so that, like you all, like me, wherever we are, Barbados remains at the forefront of our thinking, very much a concern of ours. But yes, we need to be able to rid ourselves of that mindset that our diaspora abroad is anything other than fully Bajan. And that is why I was delighted to have been able to go to the UK as a foreign representative, as a high commissioner representing the country that I identify with, to affirm to people, you don't necessarily have to be born in Barbados or be living in Barbados, and to be fully Bajan.
100%. So, Guy, I want to ask one other question. In terms of your leadership blueprint or your background in leadership, what would you say to people who are not aware of some of the things that you would say are characteristics that you have developed in terms of why you believe you can be a political leader and potentially a leader of Barbados? What are some of the characteristics, building blocks, bio? Give us a bit of a background about that.
Well, I mean, okay. And if you say what makes me think that I would be the more effective leader of the Democratic Labour Party, I understand some of the core competencies of leadership. I know how to bring people together and make them work effectively.
Can you give us some examples of any, you can use Windrush or anything. Just
well, let us use Windrush. Let us use Windrush. We took a story that was languishing in the Guardian newspaper. I got together a core team and we made it front page news. We planned an entire campaign, which we executed efficiently and effectively, that brought attention across all the media houses, that brought the UK government to the table, that brought the Prime Minister to meet with her government counterparts from the Caribbean. It was a meeting I organized myself. So what you're saying is, in terms of mobilizing people, getting a message out, bringing attention to an issue, or even if you want to say for 2016, fundraising, communicating effectively through different mediums, all of that I have done and done successfully. The challenge we are facing now in the Democratic Labour Party is that outside of those who gather frequently at George Street or at the branch level, the nation has no sense of what the Democratic Labour Party is all about. There's no sense of vision, no sense of leadership, no sense of presence. And anyone who has been following the politics in Barbados will know, since my entry into the race, the Democratic Labour Party has been more visible and been taken more seriously than it has in the last 3 years, to the extent that Barbados Labour Party commentators are deliberately and supporters attacking me and encouraging support for the current president, in the same way that Donald Trump tried to get Bernie Sanders into as his opponent, because they know, and the Prime Minister has said, that the current president is the best gift to the Barbados Labour Party. As I said, I plan to be her headache and nightmare if I get the chance. We have to make the government feel accountable, because right now with a 30 seat or 29 seat majority, it is doing as it pleases.
I will speak to another aspect of your sort of things that you will have to take responsibility for or be involved in. Barbados has seen a shift, and as someone who has a religious standing, would you say that morality is an issue that we should take seriously in Barbados? And do you think there's an argument that we have declined in terms of morality? I don't know, for example, the gun crime at the moment, the recent video that was publicized with the Trojan writing. Give me a feel about what you consider to be relevant or important, or do you think these are non-issues?
No, these are very serious issues, as you said, that the erosion of some of our core values is driving a certain level of deviance, a certain level of corruption, a certain level of immorality in the society. And it cannot be left to civil society to address these things. Government must take responsibility. And I want to say this, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. You have had persons who are on the fringes of society engage in illicit activities, who have been actively promoted at government events and at national events. I have friends of mine who are in the police force that they've said they have never seen so many persons known to the court attending government functions than the present. And it is a problem, because while people talk about supporting the small man, these are not just small men, these are big criminals. And when you actively embrace them, whether it is for votes or the mobilization of people or networking on the ground, you send a message that anything or whatever you do, once you can get support from a politician or the mainstream, it becomes legitimate. And we need to be able to take people out of what is, and you, I think, alluding to it, a growing gray area in the society between right and wrong, and really say what is right and what is wrong, and hold a strong line on our core values, or we will end up losing our society. And as we have seen in other Caribbean countries, where the rule of law and the authority of law enforcement and the police force is now something that is discretionary.
So, Guy, would you make this an important feature of your campaign?
It is essential. It is essential. It's not just about politicking. This should be a central feature of our society. We should be, all of our key stakeholders in Barbados should be speaking to the decline or erosion of our values and the lost attitudes and the important moral principles upon which Barbados has been strong. The notion of pride and industry as a motto has lost its resonance in the society, and we have to act, all of us together, towards recovering that. We've got to instill in our young people, instill in workers, we've got to instill in our community that importance of being conscientious and being your sister and brother's keeper.
Well, I must admit, this is not a big issue at the moment in Barbadian society. So hopefully, if it's something that you think
Chris, I'm sorry, and if I can, I think it is. I think it is. There was a huge furor following Good Friday actions in the Red Sea, and as you said, that Trojan Rhythm video. There was a huge furor, but people are not speaking publicly on it because of a concern that there may be political sensitivities involved.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. All right, I'm going to shift the question to education. You have a background in education, and I want to ask you, how would you address I must admit, it might be something that a lot of Barbadians are not aware of. I only got exposed to this because, as you heard, I'm bringing Barbadian workers up here to work, and some of these skill set that I saw really appalled me. People who, I'll be honest with you, they're not from the what we would call the established schools, but these are people who obviously grew up in Barbados. They have no educational certificates. Some of them could not read properly, et cetera, et cetera. And I was exposed to this. So I'm trying to find out, because I sadly may not have been exposed to the changing educational structure in Barbados, but I now realize there's definitely a great chasm within the Barbadian educational system. How would you go about addressing this? And do you agree there's a big change and a shift that many people are not aware of in terms of the whole educational system in Barbados?
Let me say this to you, and as you, when I was working in education, I did an analysis and I realized that less than 20% of the students in our educational system get 5 or more CSEC, or for the UK audience,
less than
5 or more, get 5 or more. Less than 20% of those who sit O levels, CSEC, get 5 or more at any one sitting. So it means that 80% of our school cohort leave or finish 5th form without those 5 certificates. This is a serious indictment on our entire educational system, but it does not happen in the secondary schools. When you look at the performance in the 11 plus, what we have is a number of students who are being pushed through a system with serious learning challenges from the primary school level, and that they go through the entire school life. And when they come out, the branding that they have got from primary school or 11 plus or second school, that they are failures, is something that now becomes so ingrained in them that you have to really rework them. There was a phrase here that was made popular in the US with education about no child left behind. We need to take an approach like that, which is very serious, but we cannot deal with education in a vacuum. When you look at the performance in the educational sector now, or 11 plus, even probably at 5th form, you are going to probably be able to find a disproportionate amount of children who are doing well, coming from what we would say middle or middle upper income homes. So what we have to realize is what is part of the reason why students are not doing well is because they may not have an enabling environment at home that supports them. Let us look at this situation in COVID. We did not make it a national priority to ensure that all children in Barbados had access to online learning and learning devices and the internet access to do this. We know that children who, as you're using your phraseology, from the gardens and the heights and the terraces, they are not affected. But for children whose parents are on a limited wage or may have lost their work because of COVID, how did we guarantee this? And so we can be perpetuating a system of failing the children. These are not children failing, the system is failing them. And so we have to go back to an educational system that we can be thankful to our band, the Democratic Party, for really putting in place. But 50 years on, we cannot expect that system to continue to work as it was working 50 years ago. So we need to look seriously at teacher education and training, the modalities for delivery, all of these things, which, if we remember, EduTech was supposed to deliver but didn't. We need to seriously investigate and invest in a 21st century learning system that is going to meet the increasing needs of students who are not academically, or I would say naturally inclined because of sometimes socio and psychological reasons to be able to sit through and pay attention in a classroom setting of chalk and talk for 5 or 10 years of their life. We have got to reform education top to bottom in a fundamental way. And that includes our tertiary level education as well.
All right, I'm going to ask a question about the economy. Barbados, like many other small developing independent states, island states, have had a real impact by the COVID pandemic. How would you go about addressing some of the very critical issues that we have found ourselves in, which is one, trying to now move away from the dependence on tourism to trying to see how we can balance out the economy to have a lot more drivers coming from different sectors? What would be your plan? Because like you're talking about education, and we can even put in that health, other things. These things cost a whole set of funds to be able to change them. I mean, the point you made about people not being able to have sufficient hardware to get classes online is a very valid one, because I was in Barbados last year and I saw some family members of mine struggling, or people in areas. I was shocked. Everybody was off of school and they had to work on a computer, not really having one. So how would you address the economic issues that underpin Barbados at the moment in a very precarious? People keep talking about our foreign reserves, but it's mostly debt. So what's your sort of potential way to get around this problem now in the economy? What's your plan?
Okay, and let's talk about the state of the economy. We're in a bad way, as you pointed out, because of tourism, because of COVID-19's impact on tourism. Our major economic sector has been in a catastrophic state. That's not Barbados, that is globally. But as you said, it speaks to, and as a consequence of that, we have seen the way in which this government has found itself almost in an identical situation to the previous one, except it communicates things better. Our debt to GDP ratio has gone back up. It is one of the highest in the world again. As you have alluded to, the fact that they say we've got foreign reserves, the reality is this is all coming from borrowing. And this is like, if you go to a Fed with $100 in your pocket, but it belongs to your friend, you might got $100 in your pocket, but it's not yours. So that what we have is a government that has created the veneer and an illusion that all is well economically, but we are in dire financial straits. Our level of unemployment at the present is again catastrophic. People don't have money. There is no unemployment benefits. Barbados are really suffering. And at the same time, we are seeing, because government keeps taxing people, adding on the fuel taxes, adding on taxes, as they are trying to make up for the shortfall in revenue because of their decrease in corporate tax. Bajans are having to do more with less. And that is creating other social and psychological problems. You ask, what do we do? Yes, there has been this buzzword that has been going on. If you listen through the time of Erskine Sandiford, Owen Arthur, Brandon Stewart, Chris England, Mia Motley. Everybody talks about this thing of diversifying the economy. The challenge is, during the times of hardship, we talk about this, but once everything starts to get going again, we go back to our own bad ways. So we are now focused. We are saying we have to get out of tourism, but once tourism picks up again, we will start celebrating it. People will have jobs and we will go back to it. But yes, we have to diversify. We need to be serious about our agricultural sector. We need to look at it not just in terms of providing food security, but providing some niche products for us to make money internationally. When I was based in London, I met a company. They have the last surviving cotton mill in the UK, and they wanted to cultivate, to promote, to produce for export Barbados Sea Island cotton. The challenge we have is trying to get people to take agriculture seriously. Our problem of predial larceny is such that most people feel that it is not worth doing because you end up losers. There is no support within the system in terms of credit, in terms of loans, to help people involved in agriculture. Well, there's a small facility at the EGFL, but the reality is you cannot go into a bank and say, I want a loan to become a farmer, because they don't consider it viable. We need to look seriously at opportunities to create employment, to create alternative economic activity, and agriculture is one. Another thing we need to create, and I discussed this again and raised it when I was in the UK, our diaspora. We consider people as Barbadians if you're born in Barbados or if you are a child of a Barbadian. We need to extend those who qualify as Barbadians, have the right to reside in Barbados, to extend it so that Barbadians and their children and their grandchildren can be told that Barbados is an island paradise and you can leave wherever you are and know that you can come there and raise a family, get the best education, get the competitive health care. But this is what comes back to your question. How do we do this? We have got to invest in education. We have got to invest in our health care to make it world standard, not as just as a social good, but recognizing the interlinkage between our economic and social policies. When we ask Barbadians to return to Barbados, returning nationals, but we cannot guarantee that if they get ill, they will get a standard of care at the QEH, which is comparable to where they have left, then you've got a problem. Because when people reach those twilight years, which I have now entered and we are all in, they want to know that they are going to get the quality care for themselves. At one point in your life, you're worried about your children's education. At another point, you're worried about your health care. And these are things that Barbados can address, because we have had the best health care and the best education system in the English-speaking Caribbean, I would dare say the Caribbean, for a long time. We just need to get back there. And once we do that, we recognize that there are going to be the interlinkages between the social policies and economic policies, and that will bring people and investment into Barbados. If we do it together, it can work. But one of the challenges we face is too many people focus on the economy without realizing, as David Thompson used to say so often, Barbados is not just an economy, it is a society as well. We've got to look after the dollars and the people that produce those dollars at the same time.
Well, my last question before I hand back over to Marlene is just your final analysis of your project, because I see it as a project. You've sort of put your hat in the ring. There is some internal disruption. Some people, as we talked about, criticizing your presidency bid. But finally, do you believe, Guy, that this attempt by yourself to make a change, to create a new dawn, will be successful ultimately? Or do you think at the moment you're not sure how your end will come up?
But let me say this. I am working, and my team, we are confident that we will prevail in the bid for the presidency. But even not, it has been positive. It has woken up the party. It has woken up people to the party, and it has allowed people to start to ask the question, do we or should we just be taking the same old, or do we need to do things differently? Do we need ultimately to have a new dawn in our democracy in Barbados? So while I am confident in the journey that I am making, I know at the very least, Barbadians are better off because of this. And for those who try to suggest that having a democratic process of challenging one another for elections in a political organization is somehow untoward, then they really don't understand the very essence and nature of politics is about giving people choice.
Okay, thank you very much, Guy, and I pass
You're
back
welcome.
over to Marlene.
Wonderful talking with you, Chris. Good to see you,
Same here.
brother.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And we have plenty more questions to come. So in terms of the final portion of today, we're going to have a 5-minute break, and then we will return for a 45 to 60-minute Q&A. Now, the preference in terms of submitting your questions is if you would be good enough to switch on your camera if you wanted to ask your question in person, and you can also type your questions into the chat. So you can start doing that now in terms of questions from the chat, and we will go through those. But also, so if you need like 5 minutes to maybe spruce up your hair, put on a different top, please take the time to do so. But we will reconvene in 5 minutes for the live Q&A. So thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Guy. And we will see you after the break.
Thank you, Marlene. Look forward to being with you all again. Let me touch this. Mute.
Still, where is the Barbadian music tonight, man? I'm not hearing you.
I didn't know what music they set out tonight.
I
can know
be a Barbadian.
Colonel Boogie or whatever. It's only 5 minutes, right? It's at the moment 1-1, isn't it?
Hello, Ken. How are you?
Oh,
I'm fine. I'm fine. And what of yourself?
I'm okay. I'm going to go now because I've got to get bits and pieces ready. I'm off to London tomorrow with Jessie for her first trip. I'm still waiting to hear back from a friend.
Well, and be safe.
And you. And I'll see you sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
And you, Tyrone. Take care.
Okay, hi, Helen. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Well, Ken, you know good people, man.
What do you expect, Tyrone? I thought I would have been a giver.
Oh, yeah. I hope you got some tough questions for you.
I got some questions that Guy, but I'll sit this one out.
No, we don't want to sit you out.
You know, it's, as I said, it's Guy's show, and I'll sit this one.
It is not Guy's show; it's our show.
But they got 2 questions I'd like to ask Guy. Effie is very serious with regard to his.
Well, when Marion comes back, she will invite you to the platform, wouldn't she?
To lead in the party, Democratic.
Well, you think he likes punishment? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, of course not. It's a democratic society.
Exactly.
He has the right to put forward his case to the people within the Democratic Labour Party.
Mm-hmm.
And it's their right to decide whether or not they should go with him or go further.
Mm-hmm.
It's most unfortunate for it's not in this forum. This would have been interesting.
Well, that's what it is. What it is, isn't it?
Yes, it was. It's what it is.
What happens here anyway? At the end of it, we will just upload it to YouTube, and once we edit it, so
Yeah.
it's an open platform, and we have extended the invitation to Verla as well. So.
And at the end of it is we are Barbadians when all is said and done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, everything you say is now being recorded. So first of all, Guy, thank you very much for answering those questions. Thank you again, Christopher, for leading that session. In terms of opening the Q&A, I have a more personal question for you. And I hear what you're saying in terms of when you were saying you weren't thinking of the political side of this initially. I had a similar experience last year. The mayor of the town that I live in asked if I'd thought of standing for election. My initial reaction was no, had not thought about it. He said, would you? I did think about it. I decided to stand for elections. We had the elections in the United Kingdom in May of this year, and I was elected as a councillor. So it's been
congratulations.
Thank you. So it's been an interesting learning curve, but actually I'm starting to see that even if you don't come into it with political aspirations, it does not take long for that to change and for you to start getting up to speed with the way that things work and the things that are important and getting your head around policy. So for you, I'm really interested to know, first of all, what was the defining moment? What was the thing that made you go from not looking at this from a political point of view too? I know there's been something about restoring the soul of the nation. So could you put into words for us what was going on for you to say, I am now going to put my time, my energy, my resources behind running for presidency?
When I finished the working on the Windrush scandal, I thought that I had done my heavy lifting for life. I thought I had done it all. I served Barbados and Barbadians to the best of my ability. I fought against injustice, and I thought, good, as people use a euphemism, been there, done that, got the t-shirt and video. Because of COVID, I had not been home for 15 months. The restrictions and the quarantine and such was that it didn't make practical sense of going home. And when I went home on my last trip, as Chris alluded to, I had said that I thought that a contested presidency would not be in the interest of the party at this time. And while I was in Barbados, I was rebuked by a number of people, both members of the Democratic Labour Party and some just everyday citizens who said to me, this is absolute nonsense. If you believe in Barbados and you believe in democracy, you do the best that you can and you let the chips fall where they will. And the more I listened, the more I reflected, the more I prayed about it, I realized this was necessary. I had meetings with the current president and other people in the party. And out of all of that, I came to the realization this was necessary for Barbados. And while I've never had the ego or the political aspirations, or I would never say to anybody, I'm born to lead. I've realized that the responsibility of leadership has been thrust on me, and I'm going to take it up again as I did with Windrush. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And also thank you for leading and spearheading the Windrush Change, because I mean, I watched I don't know if you saw the debate in the House of Commons last week.
Yeah.
That was not good in terms of the number of people affected, the very small number of claims, and the Home Office still refusing to let go of the reins, even though they have not done a good job. So thank you for what you spearheaded there. Now, for those of you who are watching this, if you know how to raise your hand, you can raise your hand if you do have a question, and we can bring you up that way, or you can put your question into the chat and we will go from there. Now, this is, as Tyrone said, this is a chance for everyone to have a view of what you are bringing to the table. I've noticed when I was reading through some of the notes and the backstory, there have been a statement made by the Young Democrats. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to give us more than the one sentence statement that was in the newspaper. So the Young Democrats had taken issue with a statement that was made about the number of women in the party. And they were at pains to point out that the president, the vice president, the secretary, and the education officer were women. Your response was just a one-liner, and I'm not sure if it was designed that way or if you just they just hadn't published what you've said. So can we just kind of address that one, because it's one of those questions that's in the media that doesn't necessarily put you in a good light. So I would love to hear your full response to what the Young Democrats had put forward in terms of your comment about women in the party.
Okay. As I said earlier, it is unfortunate that the Young Democrats have not sought to take a neutral position and even speak factually or accurately on issues pertaining to me. It's really unfortunate because, as I said to them in a letter, integrity should inform anything and everything that we do. People have tried, and I was saying earlier, to throw things at me with the hope that something would stick. So what they sought to do was to suggest or try to purport that running against the current president is somehow misogynistic. And I said to people a couple of things. One, as someone who attended the UN World Conference on Women, somebody who has worked on women in development, I understand gender, not just conceptually, but professionally, and live it personally. But beyond that, I said to them, I am running against a president who happens to be a woman, not because she is a woman, but just who happens to be a woman. I have made the point that compared to the other political party, the Democratic Labour Party has been very, very much lacking in its promotion of women as candidates and as ministers. I have spoken specifically against the fact that on the slate of DLP candidates now for the next general election, there are only 2 women named, including the current president. I said, if I have any issue with the slate of candidates, I would have to start there. So far from the claims or the suggestions that I am misogynistic, what you have got is a distortion of facts to push a very personal agenda for someone within the party, which I've been very disappointed by, and it does not bode well for these Young Democrats as future leaders. Because if you don't have integrity when you're young, you're not going to find it when you get older.
Wonderful. Thank you for clearing that up. I appreciate it. We're now going to go to Ken Smith. So Ken, I'm asking you to unmute. So when you are ready, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening, Marlon. Good evening, Tyrone, and the other panelists. And good evening, Guy.
Good evening,
First,
brother.
let me say that I wish you all the best in your endeavor to become president of the Democratic Party. And we will finally have someone to fight against. But Guy, you know, in terms of politics, I had to score that lower blow. But Guy, in terms of trying to be president, trying to get the presidency, to win the presidency, you have to convince at least about 16 to 18 branches, along with members of the General Council and so on. How do you endeavor to do so in light of the fact you have the Young Dems against you and some stalwarts within the party who appear to be against your vice for presidency? Okay,
Ken, if I can just clarify, and for the benefit of everyone listening and participating, the Democratic Labour Party and Barbados Labour Party have very different processes for the election of leaders. Whereas the Barbados Labour Party brings delegates, we are in the Democratic Labour Party, when we get to the annual conference, it's 1 person, 1 vote. So ours is a very different system. Once you get into the annual conference in August, everyone there is entitled to nominate and vote for whomever they like. I shouldn't say nominate. The nominations are closed, but vote for who they like. There is no tie link between a branch's nomination at the branch meeting and their voting at the annual conference. So in that sense, it means that I have been nominated I am in and I'm on the ballot with the current president, and people will decide in that meeting who they vote for. Are you asking, well, do I come in as an outsider? Of course I do. Of course I do. And as I said, I know there are those who feel that she has done a lot, or she held the helm when everybody else seems to have abandoned it. And that, as I have publicly commended her for, but we now have to get election ready. And that has been a challenge we face. I don't know if you have had the chance, but in terms of our being able to communicate effectively, in terms of our fundraising, in terms of our organizing the party itself, there is so much work to be done and no time to do it. And what I bring is those skills. So that is the bid that I am making to the membership, that a vote for me is a vote for a track record in getting things done and leading teams. And I'm hoping that that is going to prevail in August.
Well, good luck. I wish you good luck.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Ken. And also just kind of following on from there in terms of the skills. Now, you've had a lot of diplomatic experience being here as the High Commissioner. Can you say a little bit more about the skills and experience you bring to the table, given the current lack of direct political experience? It would be interesting just to hear you articulate that.
No, okay. And let me say it again, man. It's not a lack of direct political experience. I sat down at a table across from Theresa May, resolving the matter or dealing with the matter of Windrush. My getting myself and the other Caribbean leaders to the table was my doing. So it's not about direct political. If you're saying electoral experience in the UK, that is fine. That I would concede. But as I said, while I have never won an election in Barbados, I've never lost one or even two. So that does not make me feel any less capable. But what are you asking? What can I do? I know how to effectively communicate, both in the press, but across other media platforms. I know how to fundraise. I know how to motivate people. I have a very strong and solid background in social and public policy. I have, going back to Chris's point, I have said publicly that integrity and decency and things are not words for me, they are a way of life. So I bring what I think is a very comprehensive skill set when it comes to how can you lead and lead effectively.
Wonderful, thank you very much. We are going to our next question from the audience. So Andy, now coming to you, Andy Crick. So you should be able to unmute your microphone, there you go.
Hi, good evening all. I'm Andy Crick. Got a couple of questions for Guy. The first thing, if you are not successful in getting the leadership, have you got a plan B? What role would you play in the party if you're not leader?
I will continue to support the Democratic Labour Party the best way I can. I am running for the post of presidency on the executive. But outside of that, as a member of the Democratic Labour Party, the party has always been able to count on my support.
Okay, and the second thing is, if you do get the leadership of the DLP, and you are challenging Mia for the prime ministerial role of Barbados, and you do put a manifesto together, what will be the top 3 things on that manifesto?
Sorry, that is about 3 steps too far down the road.
Okay.
Let me say this, okay? No, I want to say this. And part of it came out, so I can't get for manifesto because that is very specific. But what we have been talking about today, one of those things is looking seriously at how we restructure and diversify this economy so that we don't find ourselves as vulnerable to external shocks as we do currently. One of the other things is to balance that with some effective social policies to meet the needs of Barbadians, education, health care in the main, but also with an effective social safety net. And the third thing is dealing with the rule of law, integrity, yet stamping out corruption in Barbados. And I would say, if though you ask me what are the three pillars that I feel Barbados needs to be building on, it is those: the economy, the society, rule of law.
Okay, so you have kind of touched on what I was hoping you would say anyway, because I've got a problem with integrity and the rule of law in Barbados, and corruption and the handbacks and stuff like that. So the integrity bill, I would hope that would be top of your things to do, and you've said it, so that's
yes,
fine.
That would definitely be one of my priorities. We have to get it. It has been languishing for too long. It has been languishing for too long. And we have to be willing to put, as we say, lack of a better money where our mouth is. We can't just talk about it in order to get votes or try to get support from other interest groups. We have to commit to this with recognizing that it is the corruption and the lack of integrity in public life is coming at a huge social, economic, and political cost.
Okay, I will take your word for that.
Thank you. I hope you can hold to it.
Okay,
I plan to hold to that commitment.
I will. I'll hold you to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good to see you, brother.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy. Now we have a question from the chat. So it reads, Guy, you've said regarding Donville Innis that you're not a fair weather friend. However, how does that square with the views you have expressed around morality and integrity? So that is one of the questions in the chat.
No. Let me respond to that. Having paid careful attention to the case and understanding all of the facts, I do believe that Donville Innis has a very high likelihood of being acquitted on all charges, because I believe that those charges were not done in a transparent or impartial manner.
Thank you. And just while we're on the subject of the rule of law, that was one of the kind of behind the scenes discussions and questions that was kind of put forward that we were discussing. So one of those questions is, how will you improve the workings of the criminal justice system in the country, which by all measures appears to be broken? So we've just touched on the law, so I'd like to just bring that one home as well.
I would say to you that like with economic policy, I would need to seek expert advice, because recently we added the number of judges on the bench. We increased them, but people seem to be no more satisfied that justice is being done in a timely manner than they were before. As you are alluding to, people feel the system is broken, and without legal training or being an officer of the court, I would not try to find the solutions on my own, but they have to be found. They have to be found, because it affects us economically when people cannot get matters resolved. It affects us socially when people cannot get their business concluded. And it is a major priority and a serious impediment in Barbados presently.
Wonderful, thank you. And while we're on that subject of the island and the future of the island, there was a previous discussion in one of these forums where we needed a whole section on this about the dependency on tourism and what Barbados can do, particularly with the devastation of the pandemic, because it relies heavily on tourism. So what are your thoughts? What can Barbados do as we move into the 21st, 22nd century to end that over-reliance on tourism? Because there was talk about technology, there was talk about innovation, but that was just talk. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Okay, one of the things we have to accept for the short and medium term is that tourism is going to remain the leading sector in our economy. But what we have to do, and if we take a step back to the 60s, at the point of independence, or for our independence, Mr. Barrow, the Democratic Labour Party, built the Barbados Hilton. And the Barbados Hilton was iconic, not just because it was the wonderful black marble, for those who remember, but it signaled the movement from agriculture into tourism. And at the same time, they also inaugurated the legislation for the financial services sector, which really picked up in the 80s under Tom Adams. But what we're saying is that movement is not one, you can't just shut down a sector of the economy or start another one. We have got to send the signals and create the enabling environment for people to move into new sectors. Now, let's take, for instance, there's this whole discussion around medical marijuana. For me being based here, it's amazing the way in which Colorado has repositioned its economy around the marijuana industry, medicinal and otherwise. We have sought as a country to get into that, but the licensing is so prohibitively expensive that the small business person cannot even consider getting into this. And these are the things we have to look at. What are the impediments in terms of licensing, access, financing that will allow us to develop new industries? I said earlier, agriculture, we must go back to, both in terms of reducing our food import bill, but also developing new niches around those sectors. There are opportunities for us. There are even opportunities to look at our tourism industry through different lenses and get into ecotourism and niche products as well. But we have to be able to recognize the need to move away, or to diversify and reposition our economy for the future. I was saying earlier to Chris, the problem we face is in times of plenty, people forget what they need to do and they hold on to what they have. My commitment is saying we need to accept that the system, kind of like with the courts, our economic model is broke and we have to fix it. We have to fix it.
Are you hopeful that we can fix it?
Yes, I am. I am. Barbadians, look, we have a lot of the key inputs to doing this. We've got a very well-educated workforce. We have had over time the right values and attitudes, our motto of pride in industry. There are a lot of the key inputs that are there that we can harness towards repositioning our economy for the 21st century. But it will take work. Sacrifices are going to have to be made. People are going to have to realize we can't just continue doing it the way we did it before. If we are going through educational reform, it's going to be difficult on students, parents, teachers, the whole system. But we have got to accept now that we cannot any longer just hope that things will get better. We have to commit ourselves to making sure they actually do get better.
Wonderful, thank you. And I appreciate we've had a lot of your time today. So we're going to be closing in the next 5 to 7 minutes. So for those of you who are in the audience, if you have a question, please bring it forth. One of the questions we had in earlier, so it's a complete change of tack. It comes down to morality. So the question was along the lines of, as a religious person, what do you think of the argument that society has declined in terms of morality? For example, music, lyrics, dancing, ways of dressing. Anything you would like to say on this particular topic?
Yes, I mean, as Barbados, like other societies, including the United Kingdom, where I know many people are based, have moved from traditional to more modern societies, as we have moved away from the extended family and community settings, a lot of values have been lost. A lot of attitudes have shifted, some for the better, some for the worse. There is an element of nostalgia that kind of compels us to want to get back to the old time. But the reality is we can't recover that. And if we are critical, those old times were not always good old days. There were a lot of problems tied into them as well. What we have got to do is find ways of infusing, especially our young people, but our wider society, with those values. So a generation ago, you could have presumed that because somebody was involved in extracurricular activities and went to church and engaged with extended family members, there were certain competencies about being parts of teams, respect for adults, certain moral standards that were communicated and they acquired because of these community connections. That's not the reality anymore. So what we have got to do is look at our educational system. And accepting that there is a societal problem, begin to work out how are we going to insert some of these competencies, into the system, so that our younger generations, as they come through the system, are more likely to acquire them than they are today. One of the things we have to do as well is that, again, we have had for generations an array of social services, the National Assistance Board and the Welfare Board and the Child Care Board and this board and that facility. They are not working together. There is a lot of duplication. There's a lot that falls through the cracks. It's about time in the 21st century that we develop, as we did with our revenue authority, a single social services department. And rather than dealing with the needs of a mother or a child or a grandparent, we deal with the household as the point of interaction so that we can have a profile on the house and we can interface with all of them and address the needs that are there. So I'm saying to you, yes, our social fabric is being worn out, but we can repair it, but we have just got to put the necessary things in place to get it done.
Wonderful, thank you for that. And we have a—
You're welcome.
Wonderful, seriously, I'm really enjoying this. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure everybody—
You're welcome. I've enjoyed being here too. I've enjoyed being here. You know, this is the Diaspora there knows how close they are to my heart. And so this has been a wonderful opportunity for me to engage with you all this evening.
Wonderful. We've got 3 more questions in the chat, and I've got one more that I might throw in as well. So first question, no need to apologize. She says, apologies if this has been spoken about. We've touched on it, Judy, but you're going in a different direction. She says, I'm concerned about people who came to the UK as children, but have been given a 12-month prison sentence, so face forced repatriation to Barbados. She says, we know the CJS imposes harsher penalties on Black people. Those people who have not reoffended, many of them have children, elderly parents, sick relatives who rely upon their support. So her question is it right that someone who learned criminality in the UK be sent back to Barbados just because they did not get their British citizenship? Or would you support Barbados saying that people should stay in the UK whenever possible?
I will start off with the last point. When I was at the mission in London, I made the point that the only way an emergency travel document should be issued is if somebody requests it. No one can leave the United Kingdom to travel without a travel document. And so I try to convey to people, if they do not receive a travel document, they cannot go anywhere. But that is just on that note. Now, we have seen, and I'm going to say this and try to put it in a sequence for it to resonate. Between emancipation in the 1830s to the riots in the Caribbean in the 1930s was 100 years. Between emancipation in the United States in the 1860s to the civil rights movement in the 1960s was almost 100 years. There is going to come a time when the Black West Indian or Caribbean communities are going to realize that they are not going to advance in the United Kingdom unless they stand up for themselves. And I say this because this is what we did in Windrush. We reached out, we got the governments, we got the Black MPs, we got civil society, we got the media. We made it a powerful force. What is happening too often is that individual cases get lost. And this is what was happening with Windrush. When the Guardian was writing about these individual stories, it was not until we made it, in a sense, public and political that it got the attention. I say all of that to say, until our diasporas, the Caribbean, the African, they get recognized that they have to do this themselves, things are not going to change. Why? If we look at the history of the United Kingdom, why should we expect a white, racist political party to show any compassion for us? If we want change, for those who want change in the UK, they're going to have to demand it and possibly literally have to fight to get it. People have to be prepared to make the effort because you only reap what you sow. That country, that government that leads the United Kingdom has no interest in people, I would say Black people for sure. And therefore, the quicker that people realize that, and to this certain extent, that the Labour Party has a history of racism as well, until I would say our diasporas get organized and start to agitate for themselves, they are not going to see the results. So no, people should not be deported, but the system is stacked against them and people have to stand up for their rights and fight to get for what they deserve, because this government and the country is hell-bent to treat us all like we are nothing.
Oh, thank you. And this dovetails beautifully into the next question. Now, Cece has said, she says, good evening, Guy.
Good evening.
And she says also, great to see you. She says, should you be successful in your leadership bid and leadership of the nation, would you pursue the Church of England for reparatory justice with the same vigor as I assume you would from European governments? So in general, how would you go about this issue?
Let me put it this way. If you all realize, Mr. Barrow, who I think I have higher regard for than any other human being that walked this earth, at our independence, and you would realize that when Barbados became independent, we never asked for reparations. He made the statement that Barbados would not be found loitering on the colonial doorstep past closing time. Our Constitution refers a preamble of the 1651 Declaration of Independence. And it is not, in a sense, accidental, because what Mr. Barrow did was took his view of history from when Barbados would have been settled And all through when the country would have not been ruled in the interest of the Black majority, the enslaved at that time, he still saw that as part of our history. So I say that to come back there. In the 21st century, not only if the United Kingdom is not prepared to treat people in the United Kingdom who are by law and morally its children and its citizens, can Barbados expect to get anything from them? So I would say this, my energy would be spent on trying to pursue what I feel are attainable causes. I would make, and anyone who wants to make these moral arguments, I would so engage, and I would speak against the historic injustices that Barbadians suffered at the hands of the British. But I would not make this a priority, because I can say this, that I have no sense that Barbados would receive any compensation from anyone. And if we are going after the church, we would have to start with the state as well. David Cameron in 2015 told the Caribbean to move on. Britain has no interest in this. At the international conference in 2000 on racism, the UK, the US, major European powers refused to even acknowledge that slavery was a crime. There's no compensation that we are getting. We have to go forward on our own. We have to put our hand to the plow and press forward the best way we can. There's nobody that is going to help us out if they have a choice. And this is why I say to those in the UK, those who belong legitimately to the country, you are going to have to fight for what you deserve.
Wonderful, thank you. And my final question, and Tyrone has a couple that he would like to ask of you before we close. One of the questions I was thinking, because if it hasn't already happened by the time you come into power, into leadership, Queen as head of state, what are your thoughts on this one? Because we've had big debates about this.
I've said emphatically, it's time for us to move on. It is time for us to move on. We should have a native Barbadian as our head of state, but this is not the time to do it. We have too many other things going on in the country. We need to put this on pause and deal with it when it is the appropriate time. This is now becoming a distraction for us to be getting on with the critical issues in the nation.
Thank you. And Tyrone, I'll hand over to you for your questions.
Well, I'm not sure my question is now relevant, but my question was, Republic, was that symbolic or a necessity?
No, the movement away from monarchy is a necessity. It has to happen at some point in time. Like with the Privy Council, there's going to come a time where either it's better for us to leave them before they leave us. Okay, and so it is time for us to be taking this decision and to be making this journey. But I think we are moving with unnecessary haste to try to do it to meet what I think are a political timetable or political schedule, and not a national cause.
Thank you. Marlene?
You're welcome.
So Guy, of all the things we've discussed today, all of the wonderful questions we've had, and thank you so much to everyone in the audience and from the opening from Christopher, is there anything we haven't asked you or discussed that you feel it would be important for us to know in closing about your bid for presidency?
No, actually, I think it has been very comprehensive. And just to say that at the first opportunity I get to be in the UK, I look forward to being with you all, because I have missed the diaspora, I've missed the UK, and I look forward to the opportunity of moving this kind of dialogue to face-to-face and noting that everything is supposed to end on the 19th of July. I wish you all the very best, and to say continue to be safe, because like with the struggle for the rights under the Windrush scandal, COVID ain't over yet. Keep faith, keep fighting, but be well.
Guy Hewitt, thank you so much for your time today. Christopher Griffiths, thank you for doing that first Q&A session. I thank you all for your questions. So that's it from me this evening. I think it's only right that Tyrone should close the evening with some final. I can see your face there. Don't be pulling faces on me. So I think you should close the evening with your final thoughts. And I don't know if do you know if there's what's the next date? I don't have a date in my diary for what's coming up next, but I don't know if there's anything you want to say about what you have on the agenda, given some of the other discussions we've had. So Tyrone, final closing words to you. And you're muted. Just need to unmute. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. First, I have to thank Guy for coming on our platform. I think it's been very informative, and he's also he's given us quite a rounded picture of Barbadian politics. Thanks to the members of the Hub for suggesting this. Like I said, we have asked for her if she would like to come to the platform. She's accepted in principle, but she doesn't have a date yet for us. So thanks, everyone. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. You can tell by the silence in the chat room that a lot of questions were answered without having to ask. And so thank you, Christopher. Well done to Marilyn.
Pleasure to work with the NCBA, and anytime I'm able to be involved, it was fantastic.
Okay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all, and good night.
And safe travel to your homes.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good to, well, Mr. Hewitt, you got over that bit, didn't you?
Are you still